Hey Concrete Superfans, my name's Nate Morris.
I'm Lauren Breedlove.
I'm Melissa Hall.
And I'm Rachel Schwartz. Welcome back to part 2 of our 2-part series on form oil.
So in our first video, we really went over what all form oil is and how it's used.
We also discussed the tests that we would be doing on the concrete with various amounts of form oil and the different types.
Now, I bet you're pretty excited to see the results of those tests.
So in this video, we're going to show images and videos of our testing process in action, but not only that, we'll also be discussing the results that we found from the tests that we performed.
Sounds exciting. Let's go look at some concrete.
The vibration test shows how the oil moves like it would during consolidation.
Here's the vibration test with no form oil to demonstrate how it works on the control.
Here is the vibration test with Magic Coat. You can see it vibrating up through the concrete and forming a pool on the top.
Here's the vibration test with motor oil. It's incredibly easy to see it rising through the concrete and pulling on the top.
Here is the vibration test with PAM. The PAM is harder to see, but still rises and pools on top just like the others. This next section, we will demonstrate the ease of removal of cylinder molds with the different coats of form oil.
First up, the cylinder with no form oil applied. Let's see how it performs.
Well, that didn't work. Guess some concrete must be stuck in the drilled hole, where the compressed air should be applied to get the cylinder off.
As Nate is demonstrating in the video, using a sharp-edged tool can help remove any impeding concrete. Let's see how it does after removing the excess concrete.
Get it off. There we go.
Looks like we got lucky this time without using any oil on this cylinder. Let's see how the rest will perform.
it goes. Whoa! Now that's not a pretty sight. This is what we try to prevent by using form oil. Notice this particular sample only had the
motor oil
coated on the aggregate and not the inside surface of the cylinder, thus making us believe coating the aggregate is not a sure way to prevent disasters like this.
Watch now on how Nate has to use a demolding tool and hammer to free the sample out of the mold.
While I get it into place.
As you can see, this method can cause chips and unwanted microfractures to the sample being tested. Using form oil on cylinders and the air compress technique of removal will help mitigate damages to the samples, and the molds can be recycled as well, lowering the cost and the labor overall.
There were 27 other samples that needed to be demolded for testing. There were 3 more samples that had to be cut open, which included a no oil applied sample and the aggregate coated with magic coat samples. These had no oil applied to the cylinders before placing concrete inside. All cylinders which had any amounts of form oil applied were demolded with ease.
Okay, and now we'll take a look at our cross sections. Our first cross section has no oil in it whatsoever or applied to the cylinder. This is what you'll standardly see if you just use no form oil whatsoever. It's very smooth and you can't really tell anything's weird with the cross section. Our second cross section has 3 grams of magic coat applied to the outside of the cylinder. It started to eat away at the surface area a little bit, but there's no major difference with the cross section. Our third is 6 grams of magic coat. With that, you can still see that it is eating away at the surface area, but not a major difference with the cross section. Our fourth sample is 9 grams of magic coat. You can still see it's eating away even more at the surface area, and it's starting to penetrate into the concrete a little bit. Our fifth sample is 9 grams of motor oil applied to the cylinder. As you can see, it's really eating away at the surface area of the concrete. But our cross section shows relatively no difference. Our sixth sample is 9 grams of PAM applied to the cylinder. This has had the most effect on the surface area. You can see it eating away and cracking at the concrete. And you can see also that it has started infiltrating the concrete along the edges of the cross section. Our seventh sample is magic coat mixed into the concrete. Now, you can't tell a difference with the surface area, and you can see relatively no difference with the cross section. Our eighth sample is motor oil mixed in with the concrete. This has a little effect on the surface area of the concrete, and as you can see, there are small lines around the aggregate that the motor oil just stuck itself to the aggregate. Our ninth sample is PAM mixed into the concrete. This has no effect on the surface area of the concrete, and you can't really see a difference in the cross section either. Now, if we take a look side by side of no oil whatsoever and the 9 grams of PAM applied to the cylinder, you can see that surface area of the concrete, how it goes from really smooth to the PAM's just eating away at it. If you look at the no oil compared to the motor oil mixed in, again, you can see how the no oil has no lines relatively around the aggregate, but you can see in these areas that there is a fine white line around that aggregate that the motor oil has started.
For the other 27 concrete cylinders mentioned earlier, we used those to test the resistivity and compressive strength in order to find if the different types of applications affected these qualities. The samples with no form oil mixed inside the concrete performed similar to one another. But once it came to the concrete with the form oil mixed inside, things got interesting. Take a look. The samples had more volatile explosions to them. These are two examples from the motor oil mixed inside. Now let's look at the resistivity and strength comparisons of all samples. As you can see with the samples that only had applications of form oil in the cylinder mold, they all performed relatively equal to one another. But once the different types of form oil were introduced inside the concrete, strength significantly went down, but resistivity stayed the same. These are the samples which had the volatile breaks to them. Very interesting.
Hey Concrete Superfans, I hope you enjoyed the video over form oil here in the mixed design class of Oklahoma State University.
We hope you learned a lot.
I think it's weird that I couldn't see Lauren's face starting.
Well, as soon as I stop
I know, but
talking,
you never know, because you've said I don't know when you're